The Ottoman Empire in the early 16th century was a formidable power, spanning vast territories across Europe, Asia, and Africa. By the time Suleiman the Magnificent ascended to the throne in 1520, the empire had already established itself as a dominant force in global politics. However, its stability and expansion were far from guaranteed. The political landscape was volatile, and challenges both within and beyond its borders required strong leadership. Suleiman inherited an empire built on military prowess, administrative efficiency, and religious authority, but his reign would push these elements to new heights, transforming the Ottoman state into a global superpower. Suleiman was born on November 6, 1494, in Trabzon, a coastal city on the Black Sea. His father, Suleiman, was a ruthless and ambitious ruler who expanded Ottoman territory through a series of decisive victories, particularly against the Mamluks of Egypt and the Safavid Persians. Suleiman's mother, Hafsa Sultan, was a concubine of high status, and she played a significant role in shaping his early education and upbringing. As a prince, or Seyt Saad, Suleiman received a rigorous education, studying subjects such as history, science, theology, and literature, as well as military strategy and governance. His intellectual curiosity and keen understanding of statecraft would later define his rule. The Ottoman system of succession was fraught with danger, as multiple princes often vied for the throne, sometimes leading to brutal conflicts among royal siblings. However, Suleiman's path to power was relatively smooth. His father, Suleiman, had already solidified his control through ruthless purges of potential rivals, eliminating threats to his own rule and, inadvertently, securing Suleiman's eventual succession. In 1512, Selim overthrew his father, Bayezid II, and upon his death in 1520, Suleiman ascended to the throne without facing significant opposition. His accession marked the beginning of one of the longest and most celebrated reigns in Ottoman history. Upon becoming Sultan, Suleiman inherited an empire at a crossroads. His father's aggressive expansionist policies had stretched the empire's military and administrative capacities. While the Ottomans controlled vast territories, including the Balkans, Anatolia, the Levant, and Egypt, they also faced growing resistance from European and Persian forces. Additionally, internal stability depended on maintaining a delicate balance between the various ethnic, religious, and political groups under Ottoman rule. Suleiman's first task, as ruler, was to consolidate his power and ensure the continued loyalty of his military and administrative elites. One of his first actions as Sultan was to reaffirm control over the Janissaries, the elite corps of soldiers who played a crucial role in Ottoman military success. These highly trained warriors, originally recruited through the Devshirme system, wielded significant influence in court politics and could make or break a ruler's authority. Suleiman swiftly secured their support by granting them generous salaries and reaffirming their privileges, ensuring their allegiance during the early years of his reign. This strategic move allowed him to embark on ambitious military campaigns without fear of internal rebellion. Beyond securing his military base, Suleiman sought to establish his own legacy by undertaking bold initiatives in governance. He immediately set himself apart from his predecessors by focusing on legal and administrative reforms aimed at strengthening the empire's institutions. One of his earliest efforts was to restructure the Ottoman legal system, ensuring consistency in the application of justice across the empire. This would later earn him the title Kanuni, or the Lawgiver, a testament to his commitment to justice and governance. The early years of his reign also saw an emphasis on diplomacy. Unlike his father, who had preferred military aggression, Suleiman combined military strength with astute diplomatic negotiations. He cultivated alliances with European states that were enemies of the Habsburgs, such as France, and sought to keep rival powers divided. This diplomatic acumen would prove invaluable in the wars to come, as Suleiman would face formidable opponents on multiple fronts. Despite his focus on administration and diplomacy, Suleiman's reign was also marked by grand ambitions of territorial expansion. He saw himself as the rightful successor to past Muslim and Roman emperors, envisioning an empire that would surpass both the Byzantine and Persian legacies. His first major military campaign was against the Kingdom of Hungary in 1521, culminating in the capture of Belgrade, a strategic fortress that would serve as a gateway for further expansion into Europe. This victory demonstrated his military prowess and solidified his reputation as a formidable leader. Religious authority also played a significant role in Suleiman's early rule. As the Ottoman Sultan, he was not only a political leader, but also the caliph of the Islamic world. His policies aimed to strengthen the Islamic character of the empire while maintaining tolerance for the diverse religious communities under his rule. The Ottomans governed a multi-ethnic and multi-religious population, including Christians, Jews, and various Muslim sects, and Suleiman sought to integrate these groups through a combination of legal protections and strategic appointments of local leaders. By the end of his first years in power, Suleiman had firmly established himself as a ruler of immense capability. His military successes, administrative reforms, and diplomatic strategies set the stage for an era of unprecedented prosperity and expansion. The world would soon come to recognize him as Suleiman the Magnificent, a leader whose reign would redefine the course of Ottoman history and leave an enduring legacy. The ascension of Suleiman to the Ottoman throne in 1520 marked the beginning of a transformative period in the empire's history. Unlike many rulers who inherited a throne through turbulent succession struggles, Suleiman's path to power was relatively unchallenged. This smooth transition was largely due to the groundwork laid by his father, Selim I, who had eliminated potential rivals and expanded the empire's reach. However, while Suleiman did not face immediate opposition, his ability to govern effectively was far from guaranteed. The early years of his reign would test his leadership, requiring him to establish his authority, consolidate power, and implement reforms that would define his legacy. One of the most pressing tasks Suleiman faced upon taking the throne was ensuring the stability of the Ottoman military. The empire's power had been built on military strength, and any sign of weakness in a new ruler could invite rebellion or foreign aggression. Suleiman quickly asserted his control over the Janissaries, the elite corps of soldiers who had been instrumental in Ottoman military victories. By granting them increased stipends and reaffirming their privileges, he secured their loyalty. This move not only ensured military stability, but also demonstrated his strategic understanding of governance, as the Janissaries wielded considerable influence in state affairs. Beyond the military, Suleiman needed to assert his legitimacy as ruler to the broader population. The Ottoman Empire was a vast and diverse entity, comprising numerous ethnic and religious groups, including Turks, Arabs, Persians, Greeks, and Slavs. Governance required balancing these groups while maintaining the Islamic identity of the state. As caliph and sultan, Suleiman reinforced the Islamic foundations of his rule, portraying himself as a just and pious leader. At the same time, he maintained the Ottoman tradition of tolerance toward non-Muslim communities, ensuring that Christians and Jews retained their rights under the millet system, which granted religious minorities a degree of self-governance. A significant aspect of Suleiman's early reforms was his focus on legal and administrative restructuring. The Ottoman Empire was a vast and complex political entity, and governing it effectively required a strong legal framework. Suleiman sought to standardize and improve the legal system, ensuring that justice was applied consistently throughout the empire. He revised existing laws and codified new ones, addressing issues such as property rights, taxation, and criminal justice. These legal reforms would later earn him the title Kanuni, or the lawgiver, though in the West he was more commonly known as the Magnificent due to his military and cultural achievements. Economic stability was another priority during the early years of Suleiman's reign. The empire's economy depended on trade, agriculture, and taxation, but inefficiencies in revenue collection and corruption within the bureaucracy posed significant challenges. Suleiman took measures to combat these issues by implementing financial reforms aimed at improving tax collection and reducing the power of corrupt provincial governors. Additionally, he encouraged commerce by maintaining and protecting trade routes, particularly along the Silk Road and throughout the Mediterranean. The empire's strategic location made it a crucial hub for trade between Europe, Asia, and Africa, and Suleiman recognized the importance of fostering economic growth to sustain imperial power. Diplomacy played a key role in Suleiman's early rule, as he sought to consolidate the empire's position on the world stage. Unlike his father, Suleiman, who had largely focused on military expansion, Suleiman combined military might with calculated diplomatic engagement. One of his first major diplomatic maneuvers was forging an alliance with France against their common enemy, the Habsburg Empire. This alliance, which would shape European politics for decades, demonstrated Suleiman's ability to use diplomacy as a tool of power. By positioning the Ottomans as a central player in European affairs, he ensured that rival Christian states remained divided and unable to mount a unified opposition to Ottoman expansion. Despite his emphasis on administration and diplomacy, Suleiman was also eager to continue the military expansion of his predecessors. His first major campaign targeted the Kingdom of Hungary in 1521, culminating in the capture of Belgrade. This was a strategically important victory, as Belgrade served as the gateway to Central Europe and a crucial stronghold against Habsburg forces. Suleiman's military ambitions did not stop there. He soon turned his attention to the eastern Mediterranean, launching a campaign to seize the island of Rhodes from the Knights of St. John in 1522. The successful conquest of Rhodes further demonstrated his military capabilities and strengthened Ottoman control over crucial naval routes. Suleiman's early military successes reinforced his reputation as a formidable ruler, but they also brought new challenges. Expansion required effective governance over newly acquired territories, as well as the ability to manage an increasingly diverse population. Recognizing this, Suleiman invested in the empire's administrative structure, appointing capable officials to oversee the provinces. Among these officials was his trusted Grand Vizier, Pergali Ibrahim Pasha, a close companion from his youth. Ibrahim played a crucial role in implementing Suleiman's policies and managing state affairs, serving as a key figure in the early years of his reign. The balance between military expansion and internal governance defined the first decade of Suleiman's rule. While his conquests brought glory and prestige to the empire, his legal and administrative reforms ensured long-term stability. Unlike some rulers who focused solely on warfare, Suleiman understood that military victories alone were insufficient for sustaining an empire of such vast proportions. His approach combined strategic warfare, legal restructuring, economic development, and diplomatic maneuvering, setting the stage for what would become the golden age of the Ottoman Empire. By the mid-1520s, Suleiman had firmly established himself as one of the most powerful leaders of his time. His early campaigns had expanded Ottoman territory. His legal and administrative reforms had strengthened the empire's institutions, and his diplomatic strategies had positioned the Ottomans as a dominant force in global politics. However, his ambitions did not end there. The next phase of his reign would see even greater military conquests, culminating in some of the most defining moments of Ottoman history. Suleiman the Magnificent's reign is often remembered for his military prowess, particularly his campaigns in Europe. His strategic vision extended beyond merely defending Ottoman borders. He aimed to expand the empire's influence deep into Central Europe. The early years of his rule saw a series of decisive victories against European powers, most notably the Kingdom of Hungary and the Habsburg Empire. These military successes not only solidified the Ottoman presence in Europe, but also redefined the balance of power on the continent. One of Suleiman's first major military campaigns in Europe was the capture of Belgrade in 1521. At the time, Belgrade was a heavily fortified city controlled by the Kingdom of Hungary, serving as a key defensive outpost against Ottoman incursions. Recognizing its strategic importance, Suleiman launched a full-scale assault, utilizing both land and naval forces. After weeks of siege, the city fell to the Ottomans, marking a significant victory. With Belgrade under Ottoman control, the path to further European expansion was now open. This conquest sent shockwaves throughout Christian Europe, as it demonstrated Suleiman's ability to breach formidable defenses with ease. Following the conquest of Belgrade, Suleiman set his sights on another major European stronghold, the Kingdom of Hungary. At the time, Hungary was a crucial buffer state between the Ottomans and the Habsburgs, but its internal divisions and weak leadership made it vulnerable. In 1526, Suleiman launched his campaign against Hungary, culminating in the Battle of Mohacs. This battle would become one of the most significant conflicts in Ottoman European history. The Battle of Mohacs, fought on August 29, 1526, was a swift and decisive victory for the Ottomans. The Hungarian forces, led by King Louis II, were ill-prepared and significantly outmatched by Suleiman's well-trained army. Within a matter of hours, the Hungarian army was utterly annihilated, and King Louis II perished while trying to escape the battlefield. The destruction of the Hungarian military effectively ended the independence of the Kingdom of Hungary, allowing the Ottomans to establish direct control over much of the region. The fall of Hungary sent shockwaves across Europe, particularly within the Habsburg Empire. The Holy Roman Emperor Charles V and his brother, Ferdinand of Austria, sought to prevent further Ottoman expansion. Ferdinand claimed the vacant Hungarian throne, sparking a protracted conflict between the Habsburgs and the Ottomans. This struggle would define much of Suleiman's military efforts in Europe for the next 2 decades. One of the most ambitious European campaigns of Suleiman's reign came in 1529 when he laid siege to Vienna, the capital of the Habsburg dominions. The Siege of Vienna was a bold attempt to expand Ottoman influence into Central Europe and potentially break the power of the Habsburgs. However, despite his previous successes, this campaign would prove to be one of the few military setbacks of Suleiman's rule. The Ottoman forces, numbering over 100,000, reached Vienna in September 1529. However, logistical challenges, harsh weather, and the resilience of the city's defenders weakened the effectiveness of the siege. After several failed assaults, and with winter approaching, Suleiman was forced to retreat. Although the siege did not result in an Ottoman conquest, it demonstrated the extent of Ottoman military reach and forced the Habsburgs into a more defensive posture in the years that followed. Despite failing to take Vienna, Suleiman remained undeterred in his European ambitions. Throughout the 1530s and 1540s, he launched multiple campaigns to consolidate Ottoman control over Hungary and challenge Habsburg influence in the region. He successfully captured Buda, modern-day Budapest, in 1541, further securing Ottoman dominance over Hungary. These military successes ensured that the Ottomans remained a dominant power in Central Europe for decades to come. In addition to military conquest, Suleiman's European campaigns had profound political and diplomatic consequences. His victories forced European rulers to recognize the Ottomans as a major force in continental affairs. The Franco-Ottoman alliance, established between Suleiman and King Francis I of France, exemplified how European states were willing to cooperate with the Ottomans to counterbalance Habsburg dominance. This alliance marked a significant departure from the traditional Christian-Muslim conflicts of the past, as European rulers now sought Ottoman support for their own geopolitical interests. By the mid-16th century, Suleiman had firmly established the Ottoman Empire as the most powerful state in Europe. His military campaigns had expanded the empire's frontiers, weakened the Habsburgs, and reshaped the political landscape of the continent. While challenges remained, particularly in maintaining control over such vast territories, Suleiman's conquests in Europe solidified his reputation as one of history's greatest military leaders. However, his ambitions extended beyond the West, and soon his attention would turn eastward toward the Safavid Empire and the challenges that lay in Persia. While Suleiman the Magnificent is often remembered for his military campaigns in Europe, his reign was equally shaped by his conflicts in the East. The Ottoman Empire's long-standing rivalry with the Safavid Empire of Persia was one of the defining geopolitical struggles of the 16th century. This conflict was not just a battle for territorial supremacy, but also a clash of religious and ideological identities, with the Ottomans representing Sunni Islam and the Safavids championing Shia Islam. The struggle between these two empires shaped the political, religious, and military landscape of the Middle East for centuries to come. The Safavid Empire, under the rule of Shah Tahmasp, controlled a vast territory that included modern-day Iran, Azerbaijan, and parts of Iraq and the Caucasus. The Safavids, unlike the Ottomans, adhered to Shia Islam, and their promotion of this sect created deep tensions with the predominantly Sunni Ottoman state. Suleiman's predecessors, particularly his father Suleiman, had already fought against the Safavids, defeating them at the Battle of Calderon in 1514. However, the conflict remained unresolved, and Safavid influence continued to threaten Ottoman interests in the east. One of the primary reasons for Suleiman's campaigns against the Safavids was the ongoing instability in eastern Anatolia, where Shia rebellions, often supported by the Safavid court, posed a challenge to Ottoman rule. The Safavids frequently used these uprisings as a means of undermining Ottoman authority, hoping to expand their influence in Ottoman-held territories. Recognizing this threat, Suleiman embarked on a series of military campaigns aimed at curbing Safavid power and securing the empire's eastern borders. The first major campaign against the Safavids took place in 1533, when Suleiman dispatched his trusted Grand Vizier, Ibrahim Pasha, to lead an expedition into Persia. The Ottomans successfully captured key territories in Iraq, including Baghdad, in 1534. The conquest of Baghdad was particularly significant, as the city was a major cultural and religious center of the Islamic world. By taking control of Baghdad, Suleiman not only expanded his empire's territory, but also solidified his role as the preeminent leader of Sunni Islam. Despite these victories, the war with the Safavids proved to be vastly different from Suleiman's European campaigns. Unlike the centralized Christian states of Europe, the Safavids relied on a strategy of scorched earth tactics and mobile warfare, avoiding direct confrontation with the Ottomans. Shah Tahmasp refused to engage in large-scale battles, instead retreating deeper into Persian territory and allowing the Ottomans to overextend themselves. This strategy frustrated the Ottoman military, which was accustomed to decisive battlefield engagements. Logistical challenges also plagued the Ottoman campaigns in Persia. The mountainous terrain and harsh climate of Iran made troop movements difficult, and the Ottomans struggled to maintain supply lines over such vast distances. Unlike the rich agricultural lands of Hungary and the Balkans, the eastern regions lacked the necessary resources to sustain large armies for extended periods. These difficulties forced Suleiman to adopt a more measured approach, relying on garrisons and fortifications rather than continuous military offensives. One of the key aspects of Suleiman's eastern strategy was securing control over Mesopotamia and the Persian Gulf trade routes. The Ottomans sought to dominate the lucrative trade networks that connected the Middle East to India and the rest of Asia. By capturing Basra in 1538, the Ottomans gained access to the Persian Gulf, allowing them to challenge Portuguese naval dominance in the region and strengthen their economic position. This move also reinforced the empire's role as the primary intermediary between Europe and the wealth of the East. Although the Safavids suffered territorial losses, they remained a persistent threat. In response to Ottoman advances, Shah Tahmasp continued to support rebellions and border raids, keeping the conflict alive. However, the nature of the war gradually shifted from direct military confrontations to a prolonged Cold War of espionage, diplomacy, and proxy battles. Suleiman, recognizing the difficulty of fully subduing the Safavids, opted for diplomatic measures alongside military campaigns. In 1555, the Treaty of Amaja was signed between the Ottomans and the Safavids, marking a temporary end to hostilities. Under the terms of the treaty, the Ottomans retained control over Iraq, including Baghdad, while the Safavids maintained their dominance over Persia. The treaty established a formal boundary between the two empires, reducing direct conflict but solidifying the sectarian divide between Sunni and Shia Islam. While peace was achieved, tensions between the two empires persisted, shaping Middle Eastern geopolitics for centuries. Suleiman's campaigns against the Safavids were a testament to his strategic adaptability. Unlike his swift and decisive victories in Europe, the Eastern wars required patience, resilience, and a willingness to engage in long-term geopolitical maneuvering. Although he did not achieve total dominance over Persia, his ability to secure the Ottoman Empire's eastern frontiers ensured stability and allowed him to focus on other challenges. With his eastern border secure, Suleiman could now turn his attention to his naval ambitions and the growing rivalry with European powers in the Mediterranean. While Suleiman the Magnificent is often remembered for his military conquests on land, his ambitions extended beyond the battlefields of Europe and the Middle East. The Mediterranean Sea was a vital arena for power struggles between the Ottoman Empire and European naval forces, particularly the Habsburgs, Spain, Venice, and the Knights of St. John. Control over the Mediterranean was crucial for both economic and military reasons, as it facilitated trade, communication, and military logistics across the empire's vast territories. Recognizing this, Suleiman invested heavily in naval expansion, transforming the Ottoman Navy into one of the most formidable maritime forces of the 16th century. One of Suleiman's earliest moves to strengthen Ottoman naval power was appointing the legendary Admiral Hayreddin Barbarossa as Grand Admiral Capadon Pasha in 1534. Barbarossa, a skilled naval commander and former pirate, had already proven his abilities by establishing Ottoman dominance in North Africa. Under his leadership, the Ottoman fleet was modernized, expanded, and strategically deployed to challenge European naval forces. Barbarossa's appointment marked a turning point in the Ottoman Empire's approach to naval warfare, shifting from a primarily land-based power to a formidable maritime empire. The first major test of Ottoman naval power under Suleiman came in 1538 at the Battle of Preveza, where the Ottoman fleet faced a coalition of European naval forces led by the Holy League, which included Spain, Venice, and the Papal States. Despite being outnumbered, Barbarossa skillfully utilized superior tactics, favorable winds, and the maneuverability of Ottoman galleys to secure a decisive victory. The triumph at Preveza solidified Ottoman control over the eastern Mediterranean and forced European powers to recognize the growing dominance of the Ottoman Navy. Beyond military engagements, Suleiman used naval power to expand Ottoman influence across North Africa. The conquest of Tripoli in 1551, led by Turgut Reis, another of Suleiman's skilled admirals, further strengthened the empire's presence in the region. The Ottomans established strongholds in Algiers, Tunis, and Libya, securing key ports that allowed them to control trade routes and project power into the western Mediterranean. These conquests not only enhanced the empire's economic prosperity, but also provided a strategic advantage against Spain and the Habsburgs, who sought to limit Ottoman expansion. The rivalry between the Ottomans and the Knights of St. John, a powerful Christian military order based on the island of Malta, was another key element of Suleiman's Mediterranean strategy. The Knights had previously been expelled from Rhodes by Suleiman in 1522, but they re-established their stronghold in Malta, from where they launched raids on Ottoman shipping. Recognizing the strategic importance of eliminating this threat, Suleiman launched the Great Siege of Malta in 1565, one of the most intense and dramatic battles of his reign. The siege, led by Mustafa Pasha and Turgut Reis, initially seemed to favor the Ottomans, as their forces outnumbered the defenders significantly. However, the resilience of the Knights, combined with reinforcements from European allies, ultimately led to an Ottoman failure. The loss at Malta marked one of the rare defeats of Suleiman's military campaigns, proving that despite Ottoman naval superiority, Christian powers could still resist expansion under the right circumstances. Nevertheless, the failed siege did little to diminish Ottoman dominance in the Mediterranean, as the empire maintained control over most of the eastern and central regions of the sea. Suleiman's naval strategy was not limited to warfare alone. He understood the economic value of controlling maritime trade routes, which connected the Ottoman Empire to European markets and beyond. Ottoman-controlled ports in Alexandria, Constantinople, and Algiers became thriving centers of commerce, linking the empire with Italian city-states, France, and even distant regions such as India and Southeast Asia. The Ottomans also engaged in diplomacy to further their naval ambitions, forming alliances with France, which allowed Ottoman ships to operate freely in French ports and trade with European merchants. The empire's naval dominance also played a crucial role in maintaining security along its vast coastline. The Ottoman fleet patrolled the Aegean and Red Seas, ensuring the safety of pilgrims traveling to Mecca and Medina. Additionally, Ottoman control over the Red Sea and the Persian Gulf enabled them to challenge Portuguese dominance in the Indian Ocean, further expanding their global reach. Suleiman's support for naval expansion reflected his vision of an empire that was not only dominant on land, but also a leading power at sea. By the later years of Suleiman's reign, the Ottomans had firmly established themselves as the supreme naval force of the Mediterranean. While challenges remained, including continued conflicts with Spain and Venice, the foundation for long-term Ottoman maritime strength had been laid. Suleiman's investment in naval warfare allowed the empire to project power across 3 continents, ensuring that it remained a dominant force in global affairs. Suleiman's success in the Mediterranean was a testament to his ability to adapt to new forms of warfare and recognize the importance of maritime power. His reign transformed the Ottoman navy into a force that not only secured territorial expansion, but also enhanced trade, diplomacy, and imperial security. However, as his empire reached its peak, internal challenges and succession struggles began to emerge, foreshadowing the conflicts that would define the later years of his rule. Beyond his military conquests and naval supremacy, Suleiman the Magnificent is equally remembered for his extensive legal and administrative reforms. Known as Kanuni, the lawgiver, in the Ottoman Empire, Suleiman undertook a vast reorganization of the empire's laws, institutions, and governance. His legal reforms not only strengthened the administrative structure of the empire, but also ensured justice, stability, and efficiency in one of the world's largest and most diverse empires. This chapter examines Suleiman's contributions to law and governance, emphasizing how his policies shaped the Ottoman state and left a lasting legacy. At the heart of Suleiman's legal reforms was the canon, secular law, which complemented Sharia, Islamic law, in governing the empire. Prior to his reign, Ottoman law was a mixture of customary practices, religious decrees, and ad hoc legal decisions made by individual sultans. Recognizing the need for a more standardized and codified legal system, Suleiman ordered a comprehensive review and revision of existing laws. Under the guidance of his chief jurist, Ibbasud Effendi, the canon was systematized, ensuring consistency in legal rulings across the empire. These reforms helped to unify the diverse populations within the empire, creating a legal framework that was applicable to both Muslims and non-Muslims. One of the most significant aspects of Suleiman's legal reforms was his commitment to justice and fairness in governance. He sought to eliminate corruption and inefficiency in the empire's bureaucratic and judicial systems. His policies aimed at ensuring that judges, administrators, and officials were selected based on merit rather than personal connections. Corrupt officials were harshly punished, and the judicial system was restructured to provide fair and impartial rulings. The role of qadis, judges, was reinforced, ensuring that legal disputes were settled according to both Islamic principles and the canon. This emphasis on justice earned Suleiman the admiration of his subjects and reinforced the legitimacy of Ottoman rule. Suleiman also introduced significant reforms in taxation and land administration. The empire's vast territories required an efficient system of revenue collection to fund its military campaigns and public projects. Suleiman restructured the Timar system, which allocated land to military officers in exchange for their service. He ensured that the system was applied fairly and prevented abuses by provincial governors who often exploited peasants. Additionally, he introduced tax regulations that protected agricultural producers while maintaining a steady flow of revenue for the state. These fiscal policies helped sustain the empire's economic prosperity and military strength. Another major achievement of Suleiman's rule was the promotion of religious tolerance and the protection of minority communities. As the ruler of a multi-ethnic and multi-religious empire, Suleiman recognized the importance of maintaining social harmony among Muslims, Christians, and Jews. The millet system, which granted religious communities a degree of autonomy in legal and religious matters, was further strengthened during his reign. This system allowed non-Muslim communities to govern themselves under their own religious laws, reducing tensions and fostering loyalty to the Ottoman state. By ensuring religious coexistence, Suleiman created a more stable and unified empire. In addition to legal reforms, Suleiman made significant contributions to urban planning and public works. His reign saw the construction of mosques, schools, hospitals, and bridges, many of which still stand today. In Constantinople, modern-day Istanbul, Suleiman commissioned the great architect Mimar Sinan, who designed some of the most iconic structures of the Ottoman era, including the Süleymanî Mosque. These public projects not only enhanced the architectural beauty of the empire, but also improved the quality of life for its citizens. Investments in infrastructure, such as roads and aqueducts, facilitated trade and communication across vast territories. Suleiman's legal and administrative reforms also extended to the military. He reorganized the Janissary Corps, the elite soldiers of the empire, ensuring that recruitment and training standards were upheld. He also refined the structure of the Devshirme system, which recruited Christian boys from the Balkans and trained them for service in the Ottoman administration and military. By maintaining strict discipline and professional standards, Suleiman ensured that the Ottoman military remained one of the most effective fighting forces in the world. A key component of Suleiman's governance was his reliance on a competent bureaucracy. His grand viziers, particularly Ibrahim Pasha and Rustam Pasha, played a crucial role in implementing policies and managing state affairs. The Imperial Council, Divan, was strengthened under Suleiman, providing a more organized system for policy-making and administration. The empire's vast territories required efficient governance, and Suleiman's emphasis on bureaucratic efficiency ensured that laws and policies were effectively implemented from the capital to the provinces. Suleiman's legal and administrative reforms had a long-lasting impact on the Ottoman Empire. His policies established a legal framework that continued to be used for centuries after his death. The stability and prosperity achieved under his rule allowed the empire to maintain its dominance well into the 17th century. His reputation as a just and wise ruler earned him the respect of both his subjects and his adversaries, reinforcing the legitimacy of the Ottoman state. Suleiman the Magnificent was not only a conqueror, but also a visionary statesman who transformed the legal and administrative foundations of the Ottoman Empire. His commitment to justice, religious tolerance, economic stability, and bureaucratic efficiency ensured the long-term success of his empire. His legacy as the lawgiver remains one of the most enduring aspects of his rule, demonstrating that his greatness extended far beyond the battlefield. However, as his reign progressed, internal challenges and succession disputes began to emerge, setting the stage for the final years of his rule. While Suleiman the Magnificent is often remembered for his military conquests and legal reforms, his personal life and court dynamics played a crucial role in shaping his reign. The Ottoman court was a center of political intrigue, cultural brilliance, and intense competition for power. At the heart of this complex system was the Topkapi Palace, the political and administrative hub of the empire, where Suleiman lived and ruled with his family, advisors, and an extensive network of court officials. Understanding Suleiman's personal relationships, his courtly environment, and the influence of key figures provides a deeper insight into his leadership and the inner workings of the Ottoman state. One of the most remarkable aspects of Suleiman's personal life was his relationship with Hürrem Sultan, also known as Roxolana. She was a Ukrainian woman of Slavic origin who had been captured by Crimean Tatars and brought to the Ottoman harem as a concubine. Through her intelligence, charm, and ambition, Hürrem rose to become Suleiman's most influential wife, breaking traditional Ottoman norms by securing the position of Haseki Sultan, chief consort. Unlike previous sultans who typically maintained multiple concubines and sent their sons to govern distant provinces, Suleiman chose to remain deeply devoted to Hurrem and her children, marking a significant shift in Ottoman court politics. Hurrem's influence extended far beyond the harem. She played an active role in political affairs, advising Suleiman on matters of state and engaging in diplomatic correspondence with foreign rulers, including Sigismund II of Poland and Catherine de' Medici of France. She was also a major patron of architecture and charitable works, commissioning mosques, schools, and hospitals across the empire. Her rise to power led to a new era of harem politics, where women of the imperial household wielded unprecedented influence over the empire's political affairs. This period later became known as the Sultanate of Women, a time when the mothers and wives of sultans played a crucial role in governance. Another key figure in Suleiman's court was his closest friend and Grand Vizier, Ibrahim Pasha. Originally a Greek slave, Ibrahim had risen through the ranks of the Ottoman administration due to his intelligence and loyalty. Suleiman trusted him deeply, granting him enormous power and even breaking Ottoman tradition by allowing him to marry into the imperial family. However, as Ibrahim's influence grew, he made powerful enemies within the court, including Hurrem Sultan, who saw him as a threat to her position. In 1536, Suleiman, possibly influenced by palace intrigue, ordered Ibrahim's execution, a move that shocked the empire and demonstrated the fragile nature of power within the court. The rivalry between Hurrem Sultan and Mahidevran Sultan, the mother of Suleiman's eldest son, Said Saad Mustafa, was another significant aspect of court politics. Mahidevran, once Suleiman's favorite consort, fell out of favor after Hurrem's rise. Their conflict escalated when it became clear that Mustafa, as the eldest and most popular prince, was the strongest candidate for succession. However, Hurrem and her allies, including Rustam Pasha, the Grand Vizier, convinced Suleiman that Mustafa was plotting against him. In 1553, Suleiman had Mustafa executed, eliminating a potential challenger but also creating deep resentment among the empire's elite and military ranks. The execution of Mustafa was a turning point in Suleiman's personal life, marking a period of increasing isolation and distrust. He became more withdrawn, and his later years were marked by sorrow and a reliance on a small circle of advisors. Hurrem Sultan remained his closest confidant until her death in 1558, which further deepened his grief. Without her, Suleiman's court became dominated by bureaucrats and officials who sought to consolidate power in their own interests. Despite the political intrigues and betrayals, the Ottoman court under Suleiman was also a center of cultural and artistic flourishing. Suleiman himself was a patron of the arts and an accomplished poet, writing under the pen name Muhibbi, the Lover. His poetry often reflected themes of love, justice, and devotion to God. The court attracted scholars, architects, musicians, and calligraphers, contributing to the Ottoman Golden Age of culture. This period saw the rise of renowned figures such as Mimar Sinan, who designed some of the most impressive architectural works of the empire, including the Sulaimani Mosque in Istanbul. The Topkapi Palace, with its grand halls, intricate gardens, and vast harem, symbolized the power and splendor of Suleiman's court. The palace was not just a residence, but also the heart of imperial administration, where key decisions regarding war, law, and diplomacy were made. The Imperial Council, Divan, met regularly within its chambers, where grand viziers and military commanders planned the empire's future. Suleiman, although deeply involved in governance, often ruled from behind a golden screen, maintaining an air of divine authority. Diplomatic relations played an essential role in the court's daily affairs. Suleiman maintained correspondence with rulers across Europe, North Africa, and Asia. His alliance with Francis I of France was a notable example of Ottoman diplomacy, as it helped counter the influence of the Habsburg Empire. The Ottoman court was also a center of intrigue, where ambassadors, spies, and merchants from Venice, Persia, and beyond sought influence and favor. Suleiman's ability to navigate these complex relationships demonstrated his skill as a statesman and his commitment to maintaining Ottoman supremacy in global politics. By the later years of his reign, Suleiman's personal life and court had undergone significant changes. With the deaths of his closest companions and the growing influence of bureaucrats and military leaders, the once vibrant court became increasingly consumed by power struggles and succession conflicts. His final years were marked by a sense of melancholy, as he watched the empire he had built face internal divisions and growing external pressures. However, even in his later years, he remained committed to his vision of a strong and just empire. Suleiman's court and personal life were as influential in shaping the Ottoman Empire as his military and legal achievements. His relationships with Hurrem Sultan, Ibrahim Pasha, and other key figures not only determined the course of his reign, but also set the stage for future power struggles within the empire. The legacy of his court extended beyond his lifetime, influencing the governance, culture, and politics of the Ottoman state for generations. As his reign approached its end, the question of succession loomed large, setting the stage for the next chapter in the empire's history. As Suleiman the Magnificent entered the final decade of his reign, the once vigorous conqueror and reformer was increasingly weighed down by age, grief, and the burdens of empire. Although his military ambitions remained strong, the challenges facing the Ottoman state grew more complex. The empire's vast size required constant vigilance, and enemies on multiple fronts tested Ottoman resilience. Moreover, Suleiman's declining health and the lingering consequences of court intrigue cast a shadow over his last years. Despite these obstacles, the Sultan continued to lead his armies, determined to defend the empire's borders and solidify his legacy as a warrior ruler. One of Suleiman's most pressing concerns in his later years was the growing threat posed by the Habsburg Empire and the Kingdom of Hungary. Although the Ottomans had successfully expanded into Central Europe in the earlier years of his reign, the rise of new military commanders and shifting alliances meant that continued warfare was necessary to maintain control over these territories. In 1566, despite being in poor health, Suleiman launched a final campaign against the fortress of Szigetvar, a strategic stronghold in modern-day Hungary. This campaign, though less ambitious than his earlier conquests, reflected his determination to keep the empire strong until his last breath. The siege of Szigetvar proved to be one of the most grueling battles of Suleiman's career. The fortress was defended by Nikola Subik-Zrinski, a Croatian nobleman and military leader who resisted fiercely against the Ottoman forces. Unlike previous campaigns where Suleiman personally led his troops in a battle, his failing health confined him to his tent, where he directed operations from behind the lines. The harsh weather, disease, and the determined resistance of the defenders made the siege more difficult than anticipated. However, the Ottoman army eventually breached the fortress after weeks of intense fighting. Despite the victory, the siege of Szigetvar came at a great cost. On the night of September 6, 1566, Suleiman the Magnificent died in his tent at the age of 71. His death was kept secret by his advisors, particularly the Grand Vizier, Suleiman Pasha, who feared that news of the Sultan's passing would demoralize the troops and encourage enemy counterattacks. To maintain order, the Imperial Council continued issuing orders in Suleiman's name while his body was embalmed and prepared for transport back to Constantinople. The deception allowed the Ottoman forces to complete the siege successfully before the news of his death became public. Suleiman's death marked the end of an era. His 46-year reign had transformed the Ottoman Empire into one of the most powerful states in the world, but his passing also highlighted the challenges the empire would face in the coming years. His chosen successor, Selim II, was vastly different from his father. Unlike Suleiman, who had been an active and charismatic leader, Selim was known for his indulgence in luxury and lack of military ambition. The transition of power raised concerns about the stability of the empire, particularly given the growing influence of court officials and the military elite. Another consequence of Suleiman's final years was the increasing dominance of bureaucrats and advisors over imperial decision-making. With the deaths of his trusted companions, including Hurrem Sultan and Ibrahim Pasha, Suleiman relied heavily on figures like Suleiman Pasha, who effectively governed in his name. While this system ensured continuity, it also set a precedent for future rulers who would become more detached from direct governance, allowing court factions to exert greater control over state affairs. This shift would contribute to the gradual centralization of power in the hands of advisors rather than the sultans themselves. Despite these concerns, Suleiman's legacy as a military commander and reformer remained undeniable. His campaigns had expanded the Ottoman Empire to its greatest territorial extent, encompassing parts of Europe, Asia, and Africa. His legal reforms had established a framework of governance that would endure for centuries, and his patronage of the arts and architecture had left an indelible mark on Ottoman culture. However, his later years also exposed the vulnerabilities of the empire: succession conflicts, bureaucratic infighting, and the difficulty of maintaining control over such a vast domain. The impact of Suleiman's final campaigns also reverberated in European geopolitics. While the victory at Sijitvar reinforced Ottoman dominance in the region, it did not bring about the decisive conquest of Hungary that Suleiman had envisioned. Instead, it marked the beginning of a long period of military stagnation and defensive wars for the empire. The Habsburgs, although unable to defeat the Ottomans outright, managed to contain their expansion, setting the stage for future conflicts that would define the balance of power in southeastern Europe. Suleiman's death also symbolized the end of the Ottoman Golden Age. While his successors would continue to rule over a powerful empire, none would match his combination of military skill, administrative acumen, and cultural patronage. The empire would remain a dominant force for another century, but internal weaknesses and external pressures would gradually erode its supremacy. Suleiman's reign represented both the zenith of Ottoman greatness and the beginning of the empire's slow decline, as later sultans struggled to maintain the empire's vast territorial holdings. In conclusion, Suleiman's final campaigns and declining health signaled the closing chapter of one of history's most remarkable reigns. His determination to lead his armies despite his ailments reflected his enduring commitment to the empire he had built. However, his death also exposed the vulnerabilities of the Ottoman state, highlighting the challenges of succession, governance, and military administration. With his passing, the empire entered a new phase, one that would be defined by both the legacy of his achievements and the emerging difficulties that future rulers would have to confront. The death of Suleiman the Magnificent in 1566 marked a significant turning point in Ottoman history. With his passing, the empire entered a period of transition, as the leadership of the state shifted from a powerful, charismatic ruler to a weaker, more passive successor. His son, Selim II, ascended to the throne, but his reign signaled a departure from the tradition of sultanic leadership that had defined the empire under Suleiman. This shift had profound consequences for the governance of the empire, as the balance of power moved from the sultan himself to the bureaucratic elite, the military, and the imperial court. Selim II, often referred to as Selim the Drunkard, was a stark contrast to his father. Unlike Suleiman, who had actively led military campaigns and overseen governance, Selim was uninterested in warfare and more inclined toward personal pleasures. He became the first Ottoman sultan to rule without ever personally leading his armies into battle, delegating military authority to his grand viziers and generals. This change marked the beginning of a gradual decline in direct sultanic rule, as future rulers increasingly relied on court officials and advisors to manage state affairs. One of the most immediate challenges following Suleiman's death was ensuring a smooth succession. In the Ottoman system, succession was never guaranteed to a single heir, as multiple princes often competed for the throne. However, due to the elimination of his rivals, including the execution of his brother Mustafa years earlier, Selim II's ascension was relatively uncontested. This was largely orchestrated by Suleiman Pasha, the powerful Grand Vizier who had already taken control of much of the empire's administration under Suleiman. Suleiman Pasha's influence during Selim's reign demonstrated the increasing power of the bureaucratic class, a trend that would continue in subsequent generations. The growing authority of bureaucrats and advisors over the empire had both advantages and drawbacks. On the one hand, figures like Suleiman Pasha were experienced administrators who ensured stability during times of weak leadership. On the other hand, this shift led to factionalism within the court, as different groups vied for influence over the sultan. The rise of the harem and eunuch factions, as well as the increased role of viziers in decision-making, diluted the power of the sultan and created an environment where intrigue and manipulation often determined policy. The Janissary Corps, the elite military force of the empire, also began to assert greater influence over imperial politics during this period. Under Suleiman, the Janissaries have been a disciplined and loyal force, but as later sultans became more detached from governance, the Janissaries used their power to pressure the court for higher salaries, privileges, and political influence. This shift would later contribute to instability, as the Janissaries increasingly acted as kingmakers, overthrowing sultans they deemed weak or uncooperative. Despite Selim II's personal shortcomings, the empire remained strong due to the institutional foundations laid by Suleiman. The legal system, military administration, and economic policies implemented under his rule provided continuity and prevented immediate decline. However, cracks in the empire's structure began to emerge. Selim's reliance on advisors meant that key decisions were often made based on political maneuvering rather than strategic necessity. One of the most notable examples was the Ottoman naval defeat at the Battle of Lepanto in 1571, where the empire suffered a significant loss against a coalition of European naval forces. While the Ottomans quickly rebuilt their fleet, the battle signaled that Ottoman dominance in the Mediterranean was beginning to wane. The imperial harem also became an increasingly powerful institution in the governance of the empire. During Suleiman's reign, Hurrem Sultan had already broken tradition by exerting influence over state affairs. After his death, this trend continued as the mothers of sultans, known as Valide sultans, became key figures in administration. Nurbanu Sultan, the wife of Selim II and mother of Murad III, played an instrumental role in shaping policy behind the scenes. This era, later referred to as the Sultanate of Women, saw the harem evolve from a private space into a center of political power, influencing imperial decisions through the manipulation of young and inexperienced sultans. Economically, the empire remained prosperous after Suleiman's death, but signs of stagnation began to appear. The influx of silver from the Americas, brought by European trade, devalued the Ottoman currency and led to inflation. Additionally, corruption and inefficiency within the provincial administration weakened the empire's ability to collect taxes and maintain infrastructure. Although these issues did not immediately threaten Ottoman dominance, they signaled the beginning of long-term structural weaknesses that would later contribute to the empire's decline. Diplomatically, the Ottomans remained a major power, but faced increasing resistance from European rivals. The rise of stronger centralized states, such as Spain and Austria, created more formidable adversaries, while Persia, under the Safavid dynasty, continued to challenge Ottoman authority in the east. Under Suleiman, the Ottomans had maintained a delicate balance of alliances and wars to keep their enemies in check. However, under his successors, a more passive foreign policy allowed external threats to grow stronger, particularly in Hungary and the Mediterranean. The period following Suleiman's death marked a transition from sultanic leadership to bureaucratic and court-dominated rule. While the empire remained powerful, the internal dynamics of governance shifted, with grand viziers, the janissaries, and the imperial harem playing increasingly dominant roles. Selim II's lack of personal involvement in state affairs did not immediately weaken the empire, but it set a precedent for future rulers who would be less engaged in governance. This change, combined with emerging economic and military challenges, foreshadowed the struggles the empire would face in the coming centuries. The next chapter of Ottoman history would be defined by both the strength of the institutions Suleiman had built and the weaknesses that arose from the changing nature of imperial leadership. Suleiman the Magnificent's death in 1566 marked the conclusion of an era of unparalleled success and stability for the Ottoman Empire. As the Sultan who had expanded the empire to its greatest territorial extent, codified its legal system, and fostered a golden age of culture and military might, Suleiman's legacy was multifaceted and enduring. Yet, as the empire transitioned into the post-Suleiman era, it faced a series of challenges that would, over time, lead to its gradual decline. This final chapter examines the lasting impact of Suleiman's reign on the Ottoman Empire, as well as the factors that contributed to the empire's eventual downfall. Suleiman's most immediate legacy was the military expansion of the Ottoman Empire. Under his leadership, the Ottomans conquered vast territories in Europe, Asia, and Africa, securing a dominant position in the Mediterranean world. The Siege of Vienna in 1529, the conquest of Belgrade in 1521, and the victory at the Battle of Mohacs in 1526 against the Kingdom of Hungary were monumental achievements that solidified Ottoman power in Eastern Europe. These victories allowed Suleiman to extend the empire's reach to the gates of Central Europe, a feat that few other empires could match. However, despite his military successes, the constant expansion also placed increasing strain on the empire's resources, manpower, and administrative infrastructure. Suleiman's legal reforms, known as the Canon, were another cornerstone of his legacy. The Canon consolidated the laws of the empire into a single, unified code that governed both religious and secular matters. Suleiman's codification of laws addressed a variety of issues, from taxation to criminal justice, and created a more predictable and efficient system of governance. The reforms also strengthened the Ottoman imperial bureaucracy, centralizing power in the hands of the Sultan and his viziers. This legal framework would be foundational to the empire for centuries and would influence subsequent rulers in their attempts to preserve the empire's stability. However, while Suleiman's legal system provided a solid framework for governance, the later centuries saw a slow erosion of the administrative structure. The reliance on viziers and military leaders, rather than direct sultanic rule, meant that the leadership of the empire became increasingly fragmented after Suleiman's death. As successive sultans failed to exercise the same level of personal control and administrative competence, power became concentrated in the hands of bureaucrats, military elites, and the powerful Janissary corps. The lack of strong, centralized leadership eventually led to the decline of the imperial court and the rise of court factions, which contributed to political instability. Suleiman's cultural patronage, another defining aspect of his reign, also left an enduring mark on the Ottoman Empire. The Ottoman Golden Age witnessed a flourishing of art, architecture, literature, and music. Suleiman's reign saw the construction of some of the most iconic Ottoman buildings, including the Süleyman Mosque in Istanbul, designed by the architect Mimar Sinan, one of the most renowned figures in Ottoman architecture. The Sultan's patronage of poets, scholars, and artists helped create a vibrant cultural milieu that elevated the empire's standing in the world. Suleiman himself was a poet and intellectual, contributing to the rich cultural fabric of the empire. However, after his death, the emphasis on cultural patronage began to wane as the empire shifted its focus to military and administrative concerns, overshadowing the cultural achievements of the previous era. Despite these achievements, Suleiman's death also marked the beginning of a gradual decline for the Ottoman Empire. The empire's immense size and diversity, while strengths during the height of Suleiman's reign, became increasingly difficult to govern in subsequent years. The administrative system, which had been effective under Suleiman, began to falter due to corruption, inefficiency, and the growing influence of court factions. The Sultanate of Women, which emerged after Suleiman's death, further complicated governance, as the influence of women in the imperial harem often led to power struggles and intrigue. The growing power of the viziers and the military elite further diluted the sultan's authority, making the empire more susceptible to internal strife. Economically, the Ottoman Empire also faced mounting challenges. While Suleiman's reign was marked by prosperity, the empire's vast territories and extensive military campaigns put a strain on its resources. The influx of silver from the Americas led to inflation and currency devaluation, which weakened the Ottoman economy. Additionally, the rise of European colonial powers in the 16th century, particularly Spain, Portugal, and later the Dutch and English, reduced the Ottoman Empire's dominance in global trade. The empire's reliance on land-based power, rather than maritime trade, placed it at a disadvantage in an increasingly interconnected world. The Battle of Lepanto in 1571 was a turning point for the Ottoman Empire. Although the Ottomans quickly rebuilt their fleet after their defeat, the battle signaled a shift in the balance of power in the Mediterranean. European powers, particularly Spain, began to challenge Ottoman naval dominance, and the Ottomans were forced into a more defensive stance. The empire's inability to maintain its naval supremacy highlighted the limitations of its military power and marked the beginning of the empire's struggle to maintain its territorial holdings in the face of growing European competition. The eventual decay of the Janissary Corps, which had once been a symbol of Ottoman military excellence, also contributed to the empire's decline. The Janissaries, once an elite fighting force, became a powerful political faction that undermined the Sultan's authority. Over time, they became increasingly undisciplined and resistant to reforms, leading to a series of Janissary rebellions in the 17th and 18th centuries. The Janissaries' influence extended beyond the military. They played a key role in overthrowing sultans and determining the course of the empire's political future. The legacy of Suleiman the Magnificent is thus a paradox, marked by both monumental achievements and the seeds of decline. His reign represented the height of Ottoman power, culture, and administration. However, the very expansion and complexity of the empire he built made it increasingly difficult to maintain after his death. The lack of strong, capable leadership in subsequent generations, coupled with internal corruption and external challenges, led to the slow disintegration of the empire. Suleiman the Magnificent remains one of the most iconic rulers in world history. His reign was a period of military triumph, legal reform, and cultural flourishing. Yet, the very success of his empire laid the groundwork for its eventual decline. The political, economic, and military systems that had been so effective under his rule proved increasingly inadequate in the face of new challenges. The legacy of Suleiman, therefore, is not just one of grandeur, but also a reflection of the complexities of ruling an empire of such vast dimensions. The Ottoman Empire would continue to exist for several centuries after his death, but the foundation for its eventual disintegration had already been laid during the years following his reign.